Welcome to our new episode of our automation community's Fire Chat. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Mary Lacity as our distinguished guest. Mary, how are you today?
I'm great, Pascal. And when you said a fireside chat, I wanted to deliver a fireside chat.
Thank you. Uh, I can feel your energy. We're super happy and honored to have you with us today, Mary. So over the coming minutes, I will try to introduce you, which is quite of a challenge to summarize such an amazing career in such a short amount of time. But here is a tentative. You're a professor of information systems and director of the Blockchain Center of Excellence in the Walton College of Business at the University of Arkansas. Your recent researches focus on improving business services using robotic process automation, cognitive automation, and blockchain technologies. A lot of great things that we will talk about. Your service automation book series with Leslie Wilcox won the 2019 Outreach Practice publication awarded by the Association of Information Systems. So it's a series of 4 books that I strongly recommend to our audience today. You have published over 30 books and most recently the Blockchain Foundations for the Internet of Values. And just before that, Becoming Strategic with Robotic Process Automation. Your publication have appeared in the Harvard Business Review, Sloan Management Review, MIS Quarterly, IEEE Computer, and many other outlets. So very, very honored to have you with us today. Let me start with our first question. As an expert in business services and information systems, you focused over the last decades on business outsourcing and cognitive automation. But then over the last few years, you've started to focus on blockchain. And I'm very eager to know more about this. Does that have a meaning as to where the levers for business efficiency are evolving today? Can you explain this transition?
Yes. So, well, first of all, it's an honor to be with you, Pascal. You are one of the leaders in understanding intelligent automation, and I love that you have your book cover behind you. I highly recommend your book to people, and I want to congratulate you on the
Thank you.
content. One of the things I loved about your book was it's so accessible. I mean, you could sit down in about 2 hours and really digest it. It's beautifully written. It's got lots of images and pictures. I really enjoyed your book, so thank you for that
Thank you so
contribution
much,
to
Mary.
our community. The
It
only thing
means
that
a
was a
lot
little
to me.
thin, but the only thing that was a little thin in your book was on blockchains, right? You only had a little sliver. So hopefully, in this conversation, we can maybe help connect the audience to service automation technologies that they're probably familiar with, like RPA and what we call cognitive automation, what you call intelligent automation, and blockchain. So, how did I get interested in this? When you mentioned we had studied outsourcing, and for a long
Mhm.
time, that was really a labor arbitrage model, right? So we were globally sourcing. It was still a lot of human labor performing the services. And probably in around 2014, we really saw that automation was going to change the landscape of services. That the first set of tools, RPA, as you well know, was very good at coming in and taking those excruciatingly robotic tasks out of a human's
Mhm.
job. And so we saw a lot of uptake with that. And then the next evolution was kind of cognitive automation. And both of those tools that we studied adoptions really take place within the boundaries of the firm, right? They're making adoptions decisions. Do I buy Blue Prism? Do I buy Watson within the boundaries of the firm? What
Yes.
completely blows my mind about blockchains is we're now talking about automations of ecosystems. So it's like a whole nother level of a unit of analysis of automation possibilities, which could really explode business value for entire ecosystems. And I love it because the challenges to actually get there are stickier and even more complicated than the ones we're mostly familiar with inside the boundaries of the firm.
Amazing. Very, very interesting. So it's about getting from the insights, the business efficiency seen from the inside of a company, with cognitive automation and RPA, from automating ecosystem of companies, with an external view to the company, with blockchain. That's amazing. Can you tell us more about what you're currently working on in the domain of blockchain, and
Sure.
what you've been researching on the topic?
Sure, absolutely. So, I primarily study how traditional enterprises are working with their ecosystem partners to develop blockchain solutions that are shared. So, I'm very much focused on traditional enterprises. I'm not focused on the cryptocurrency market or the NFTs or a lot of what you're seeing in the popular press. So, really looking at traditional
Yes,
enterprises. And what we do is we study first generation adoptions. So, technology solutions that are already out there. Because from our perspective as academics, I think really business people want to know, how do I get business value out of this? And the best way to do that is to highlight early success stories. So we just published a great article. I'm going to do my own product placement here, Pascal, in Sloan Management Review with my co-author Remco van Hoek. And we talked about first generation solutions that are already out there. And many of our examples are in supply chains. And we can talk and do some storytelling and share some examples if we get into that part of the discussion.
I would love to. Yes, yes,
Okay, so why don't we start? Why don't we tell three different stories? Because I think this will give the audience a good idea of how enterprises
very good.
approach this. Okay, so the common theme across these three stories is, how do you build a minimal viable ecosystem? So, what's the minimum number of partners you have to engage with to develop a minimal viable product? Right, so that's our initial journey and our initial goal. So, one of my favorite case studies we just finished was in Walmart Canada, with DLT Labs. They created a solution called DL Freight. And this is going to give your audience a great idea of the potential business value. So, before the blockchain enabled solution, Walmart Canada was in dispute. 70% of their invoices with their carriers would be in dispute. So Walmart is expecting an invoice to look one way, the costs, and because the accessorial charges are higher, they have to go hire a BPO provider to go investigate this. It was taking a long time to reconcile these invoices. The carriers are unhappy because they're not getting paid. Okay, so now we're looking at DL Freight, which is a blockchain-enabled digital ecosystem. And what is happening is that the invoice now gets built along the supply chain. So now, instead of waiting at the end to get this invoice from the carrier, Walmart starts the invoice with the tendering process. And as the shipments move through the supply chain, IoT devices update the GPS locations and temperature locations. There, you can upload digital documents, and by the time the final delivery is done, the invoice has pretty much been agreed upon. And now they are at under 2% of invoices that require any kind of investigation. So the business
Wow.
value delivered is tremendous. Walmart Canada no longer needs that trusted third party to do the reconciliations. The carriers are getting, the cash flow is so much better for these carriers because they're getting paid a lot quicker. And there's all other kinds of business value we can talk about. So, do you have any questions about that particular example?
That's just amazing. We talked about invoice, dispute improvement.
Yep.
Do you see other use cases
Yes. So
using blockchain?
remember I said we're talking about minimal viable products, right? So what we're looking at is like
Yes.
the first thing that gets delivered. And the minimal viable products, you have to go through all the things like agree on the data standards. You have to agree on your business rules for how you automatically execute transactions with your smart contracts. And that's kind of layer one. And the other thing is,
Mhm.
you can think of these blockchain solutions in enterprises as a thin pipeline that connects all your trading partners. They're all still connecting to their back office systems of records. They're all still connecting to their ERP systems and the transportation management systems and their RFID. But now what you have is just like a thin, you could think of as a thin rail that connects everybody, that says we all agree to this version of the truth. And so that's layer one. Once that's done, you can think about how you can add predictive and descriptive analytics, right? So now you can do things like maybe look at
Right.
weather patterns and say, oh, I see that this freight is likely going to be delayed because we've got a thunderstorm. And that can be integrated in the supply chain. And then you could see how RPA could be used, because if you're talking about connecting back and forth between the blockchain and your systems of record, you're going to have to do extract, transforms, and loads. Wouldn't RPA be sweet for that? Right? You're talking structured data following rules, right? And then I can
Yes.
envision where cognitive would come in. Like, now imagine a truck driver says, oh, there's an accident ahead, and they take a picture with their cell phone. Right. And you have the ability, if you've trained your automation tool, to interpret pictures. Or maybe there's a text message saying, I need to take an alternative route because there's a lot of traffic on it. And a cognitive automation tool could process the natural language text to talk to a smart contract. So we're just at the beginning days. The possibility of integrating all of these automation tools to really develop seamless, fast, efficient services is just so exciting to me.
It's really amazing. Uh, does that mean as well as a side effect in terms of improvement of business? Those people that used to reconcile those invoices, reconcile those different transactions at different points in time, and with all the hard work that is behind, all this doesn't need to be done anymore.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. So the they Walmart Canada didn't need that trusted third party to do those agonizing reconciliations, and then their internal
Hmm.
people are focused on more strategic things, right? They're looking at this application and seeing what else can we do with it, what other business value can we get. They're developing new business models. So before this application, they did not have the data to offer financing services to their carriers. Right now they feel more confident to do that. So the business value, once you get the data standards and those business rules set, you can see how you can continue to add value to the network in next iterations of the product.
Amazing.
Uh,
Am I right
all
to
right, now
say
that's
that?
story one. That Go ahead.
Yes, just to make sure I understood well, am I right to say that in the past we used to have those activities of reconciliation, checking transactions, authentication that used to take a lot of time from people, and we used to have armies of people working on that. What we've done is we've automated those activities using automation technologies. Uh, and now with blockchain, what happens is that those automated processes even don't need to occur anymore. Am I right to say that we are
The
just
title, you are absolutely right. And the title of our paper is called Requiem for Reconciliations. We hear a
okay?
requiem, a death mass for reconciliations. Now, of course, there still
I'm
are, there's still there there still are people doing things, but I mean, you still have
yes,
reconciliations, right? We even have the
yes,
2%, but the difference is they happen in real time, because now
yeah,
instead of waiting at the end of end of delivery to process an invoice, we say, oh, we've got an excursion from what we expected in our smart contract. Let's ask the driver what happened. So they're reconciling things quickly and along the way. But yes, you need many fewer of those low-level BPO jobs dealing with this tracking down paperwork for events that happened along the supply chain. So you're absolutely good instincts. That's absolutely correct.
okay. So does it mean I'm a bit provocative here? Does it mean that all the work we've done automating those processes over the last decade is a waste today because we won't use it. We won't use them anymore.
No, they're still using them. So I think one of the
Okay,
naive things that
just for the
people
two
think
percent.
is,
Just for the 2%.
well, no, what I mean, but all the automations and things that we still have seen done, that's typically done in the back offices, connecting ERPs to your spreadsheets or whatever. Those don't go away. I mean, if you've become more
Okay.
efficient inside the boundaries of the firm, then all that still works. Again, we're just talking about whatever you've done inside the boundaries of the firm. Now you're touching a shared blockchain platform with your trading partners. So you're not going to obliterate, you don't necessarily have to obliterate all the good work you've done. We see this more as an
Yeah.
additive
Good.
technology.
Okay. Okay. No, I would have thought it would be a good thing. I mean, why not? I mean, bringing to the next level those processes that we have automated and not having to automate them anymore. I mean, it's I would have thought it would have been a good thing. And it makes me think of other use cases like especially in banking or insurance where or telco where we need to onboard clients, check the client's solvency, for example, check the client's good good worth in the sense of those processes of anti-money laundering, for example, or KYC, know your customer. All those processes that are really the bread and butter of automation use cases today would be. I mean, we wouldn't need to automate them anymore because all this would be done, I would say, natively using blockchain.
Okay,
Am I right?
yes, no, you are on par. What I was assuming you were talking about was things we're looking at things that hadn't been automated before. There were armies of human beings doing the reconciliations. They were not automated, and it's hard to automate things like reconciliations when you have to be talking to different trading partners that have their own versions of the truth. So still today, we have a lot of human beings doing that kind of work when you talk about interfirm when you talk about interfirm reconciliations. All
Yes.
right, I'm going to give you my second story, Pascal, because I
Yes,
promised your
please.
audience. So I love
Yes.
this is a different use case. So the first use case on Walmart Canada was built on a private permission blockchain. So you have to,
Mm,
the carriers have to have permission to join. It's a very closed, tight system. So now I'm going to take you to another enterprise adoption, a completely different use case that I absolutely love, and it's called ANSA
mm.
check. You might know ANSA since I know you're French. So ANSA is one of the
Yes.
largest news media outlets, right, for in Italy. And we all know one of the big problems in the world, especially during elections, is fake news, right? Fake news is a huge problem. And ANSA was having problems with what they call imposter news stories. So it would be people that were stealing like the ANSA brand and saying this story came from ANSA. And so it was just, that really could hurt the brand, and the proliferation of these imposter news stories is just terrible. So they partnered with Ernst and Young, and they're using the blockchain to authenticate. I guarantee you this story came from ANSA. And this solution is deployed on the public blockchain Ethereum. And if you're looking at the ANSA, you can always click on the story. There's a little ANSA check, so you as a reader can click on the story, and it can tell you what the authenticity of the story. It could tell you when it was written, and in the future they'll be able to tell where it's been reposted to, if it's been edited or whatnot. So it's a first step. Again, we're talking about a minimal viable ecosystem developing a minimal viable product. So the first step is not to prevent all fake news, but to prevent imposters. And I just love the example. My students love that case study too.
Very interesting. Very
Okay.
interesting. Yes, and here, I mean, I'm trying to make the same analogy as we did for the previous example. There is no, I mean, we didn't use to automate this activity before. That's a new capability, an augmentation, I would say, from compared to what we used to do in the past.
Yes, and I think one of the strengths of blockchains is it creates a really tamper resistant record of events that have happened. An event is we publish this story. And I think it's very interesting. This example is really to reach out to the reader base, right? So that's why they
Hmm.
chose a public blockchain. And so we're seeing use cases all over, but that's a live deployment. They've got, the last time I checked, they had over 500,000 stories that are verified and secured on public Ethereum. So it's another really interesting live application out there.
Definitely, definitely. And I'm looking forward to the third one. You said you
Okay,
had
so
third.
now as a professor, I have to at least mention a little bit about theory. So now we talked about
Yes,
Walmart Canada and we talked about ANSA. These are traditional enterprises. They're adopting these technologies in what Clayton Christensen, the great father of disruptive innovation theory, would call sustaining innovation. So they're not blowing up their business models. They're making their products and services, better for their existing customers. They're improving their efficiencies. Now, what Clayton Christensen says, we're going to see disruption coming from startup communities, right? So I'm going to tell you a story of one of my favorite startups. So I've become very good friends with Colonel
exciting.
James Regener, and he has a couple of companies. One of them's called Veritex, one of them's called Rapid Medical Parts. Now, what's interesting about the Colonel, is he was working for Moog Aircraft. And
Uh-huh.
since he was a colonel in the Air Force, he remembers the days when he would be on an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and his plane can't take off because they don't have a part. And he completely re-envisioned how we need to do parts from centralized manufacturing where you ship things to 3D additive manufacturing. What if we had a 3D printer on the aircraft carrier that I could print the parts when we need them, how we need them when we need them. And so he did go launch this application. And because it's a startup, they're very nimble. So being the colonel who jumps in on everything, I guess it was about this time last year, you'll remember, Pascal, our big concern around the world was the lack of ventilators. Do you remember that? We were worried that there were
Yes,
not
yes,
enough
yes,
ventilators, right, in the hospitals.
yes, correct.
And so the
Yes,
colonel
correct.
figured out, we have an abundance of sleep apnea machines. So he figured out
Hmm.
if you 3D print a couple of parts, you can turn a sleep apnea machine into a hospital grade, ventilator very easily. And he got a contract with the Department of Defense, and he delivered on that first contract. At the end of the story, it turned out we didn't have the big shortage that we thought we were going to have. But that is all enabled by blockchain technologies because his
Yes,
concern is if you're 3D printing, how do you guarantee that the printing instructions hadn't been tampered with? Right? Especially if you're talking about things like on the Department of Defense and printing things on an aircraft carrier. So our message is, that we call these blockchain systems, really they're blockchain enabled digital ecosystems. Blockchain is just one component of the technology. And we're at the stage where we're learning how to work with our trading partners to develop these minimal viable products.
amazing. Mary, that's really impressive. Would it mean we could almost print parts of the plane while flying it? Huh? And this
He's
is
already done
definitely
that. He did that already. So
what started doing.
one of his pilot. Now it wasn't a critical part. It was so one of his pilots that he did to show that this was all feasible is he had a first class seat that had something that was broken on the seat, and then they could send messages in the air, print the part on the plane. I'm sorry, print the part on the ground, so when the plane landed, it could be fixed for the next flight. So that was the
Amazing.
first step to reduce time to turnaround times, and the play there is that if a commercial airline loses that first class seat ticket, right, that's lost revenue. So that was one of his. But then you could see once we get through regulations where you could have a 3D printer on the plane for some of the minor parts, not necessarily engine parts. But
Yes.
yes, but you can really just envision, what these technologies can do.
Impressive and very great view of the future. And when we see when we see your first use case and this use case, we can really envision the future of supply chain, huh? Where transactions would be I mean, I don't know if we can say automated, but would be made by itself, and the supply chain of some products would even not exist anymore because you wouldn't need to transport them anymore. You would just share a blockchain of the design of the items and make them and print them somewhere else in the world. And
That's right.
so that, that's
Right?
amazing.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
amazing. The future of supply chain with the support of blockchain is going to be considerably changed in the future. Um,
Well,
I
the
heard you
technology's
speak.
here
Yeah,
today, and that the technology's easy. But as you know, it's all the change management, right? It's learning how to
exactly.
work with your trading partners. I mean, there is so much managerial challenges to actually
Let
getting to
let's
this end state. But it's there.
let's talk about this. That's a very good point. So I mean, what we've seen from those examples and from what you explained around blockchain is that we need this. We need this right now. Companies need this to improve, to get to the next stage of efficiency. Why are we not yet there? I mean, what's happening there?
Well, I think we do see good momentum. I mean, I'm just looking
Yeah.
today. We just had some studies done by IDC that there's about a 40% increase in enterprise adoptions in the last year.
Okay.
I think COVID did two things. In some ecosystems, it pushed working with your trading partners to get better supply chains up the agenda. And again, I'm not pushing blockchain
Yeah.
technologies. We're really trying to. It's just one enabling technology. Like I need more nimble supply chains. We saw that explosion happen last year. And in other instances, blockchains fell down the priority list, and companies had other urgent needs that they had to do. So we saw it kind of different effects on different firms and different industries. There are a lot of challenges to working with these your partners. We don't like to go into the C-suite and even say the word blockchain because the first thing they think of is Bitcoin and crypto and it's hype and don't come sell a technology to me. So really what you have to go
Yes.
into the C-suite is give them a vision for, if we could work with our ecosystem partners to remove our common pain points, what business value would not only we get, but can we uplift the entire industry? So you have to go in with compelling storytelling backed up with a good business case that you would, it's still at the end of the day comes down to a good business case. And that's really what
Yes.
needs to happen in the C-suite.
Okay. Okay. What would you say is the level of adoption of blockchain currently in companies, if such a statistic exists?
Yes, I know I don't have a statistic. If I had to quote somebody, it's our good friends from HFS, right? So
Okay.
Phil First and Saurabh Gupta, they do. I love the work that they do. And I think the last time they did a survey, there's a proliferation of proof of concepts. I mean, you'll find thousands of proof of concepts, and very few of them ever make it to a live production system. So I think their last time I saw, I think it was about 14% of things will ever get out of a sandbox and go live. Because there are so many challenges, right? You've got to make sure
Yes.
that you've got enough of your ecosystem that can overcome the inertia within their own organizations. You have to figure out things like
Hmm.
intellectual property rights sharing and shared governance over the application. So there's a lot to work through and before you really get that aha moment.
Yes. Got it. Got it.
And you need
There
a
was
different you also I'm only really talking, I mean, I'm giving you such a small slice, Pascal, so you really actually need to bring another person in here that can talk more about the impact of blockchains on financial services. So
Okay.
mostly we have a great supply chain expertise at the University of Arkansas. My co-author is a supply chain management, but I'm not even discussing, because I don't study it, a whole world of how this is changing automation and financial services. So I just want your
Okay.
audience to know I'm focusing on supply chains because that's my particular research focus.
Got it. Got it. And I think definitely that it's those services are used to work with information and data and trust between the different actors on an ecosystem is so important that I guess they might get a lot of benefits from using blockchain. Yeah. Um, I heard about you working on digital health passports.
Oh, that's my
Is
current passion. Yes.
okay. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, yes. So, this I got into with another one of my beloved co-authors and longtime friends, Professor Iran Carmel from American University. And we were just kind of so disappointed that when we finally got our COVID vaccination here in America, we were handed this little card from the CDC, this little flimsy card. It doesn't look like a credential that's, very, I could have picked up a stack of those cards while I was standing there getting my shot because they were sitting there and sold them, So how are we going to get back to flying, get back to work, get back to school? And so there's a lot of push to have an electronic version of digital passports that be downloaded on your phone. And we started doing interviews and looking at different solutions. There's tons of good technical solutions out there already, but again, the common problem is going to be building the ecosystem that supports it. So, for example, it works best when you have a national government policy. We don't have that here in the United States,
Makes sense.
right?
Yeah.
It works best when you can connect the credentialing organizations, which would be like the labs that process a test or the pharmacy that gives you a shot, and put that in a secure digital wallet that happens to be secured by blockchain. But a lot of the uses are still self-reported. So they look like a digital health passport. It says green, but when you look at the data underneath it, it was triggered by the question, do you have a fever today? Have you been in contact with anyone with COVID? That's not that's not that's not a secure credential. So
Yes.
anyway, that's what we're looking at right now.
Very exciting. Uh, Maybe it's going to be maybe my last question. We try to keep the format quite crunchy
Okay.
and full. What do you think a company should do if they want to start their journey with blockchain? I understand we shouldn't say blockchain to a CEO, as you just
Right,
mentioned.
right.
So in an ecosystem, in an what are the next steps? What are the first steps, basically, for those companies to get into it?
Okay, well, it'd be the same thing that you would answer for RPA or cognitive automation. The ones that
Okay.
actually made it live were not coming from the IT department. They weren't going, here's a
Mm.
blockchain, let's find an application. They really were business-led projects that were
Yes.
trying to solve a pain point. And then when they brought the IT department in or their technology provider, they saw that for what we're trying to do, blockchains are the best selection of all the technology options. So it's always, solving a business case first. Now, I know you wanted to end on something snappy, so I was going to tell you 7 things that blockchains are not. This is developed with my
Okay.
co-author, right? And it's a good thing
Good.
to remember. Blockchain is not
Very good.
about the technology, right? The technology
Mhm.
works. It's about developing that minimal viable ecosystem to develop a minimal viable product. Now, here's the second most important point. It is not all data for all. It is not all data for all. It is still, a company is still in charge of their data, who is allowed to have access to it. Protecting data confidentiality is absolutely key to these solutions. So your competitors don't see anything. Only the people that are authorized to see your data will see it or have access to it. And I think that's another common misconception that the C-suite might have is like, I'm not putting all my data on a blockchain. No, you're not. You're putting proof of events that happened on a blockchain. Your data is still within the boundaries of the firm. Okay, number two, it doesn't have to be expensive. Right? So it's, there's
Mhm.
platforms that are out there that can be configurable. It doesn't have to be long. The Walmart Canada one, now think how complicated Walmart Canada is. They went from idea to live implementation in 8 months. And that includes going through
Wow,
like 19 of Walmart Canada's compliance walkthroughs and check-throughs. So it doesn't have to be long. Okay, let's see if we have another goodie. It doesn't necessarily eliminate all trusted third parties. That's kind of the promise of it, but that's not necessarily what happens. We oftentimes see trusted third parties taking in new roles or even new trusted third parties coming about. Typically, you need some kind of a benevolent operator of these networks, who's operating the nodes. And so we see services like from EY or IBM or DLT Labs. So we still do see trusted third parties. But
okay,
anyway, so the big question is, I truly believe this is a foundational technology, as foundational as the internet, right? So we had the internet, and how did that change and touch every business? Blockchains enable an internet of value so that we can exchange value with the same ease that we exchange information on the internet.
got it, got it. So this is you've given three or four, or hello,
I'm here. Yep.
you here? I
I
could
can
only
hear.
count
I'm
three or
still
four.
here. Oh, well,
Yes,
you know what?
Mary.
I get excited in my talking points, but yes, I covered most of them. I've got other kinds of
Okay,
lessons,
okay.
but
You've combined some of
you
them.
know,
You've combined some of them together.
I've
Okay,
combined some of them.
okay.
We actually have quite more than that. I've actually probably have 27 action principles on how to do this well over an adoption journey. But Pascal, we only had half an hour, so don't forget I
Yes,
teach
thank
courses
you.
in this. So the courses we get
Yes,
into more depth.
excellent, excellent.
So
And
if your
I think,
audience wants to learn more,
yes, please, yes.
if
I
your
was
audience
about to
wants
ask
to
you the
learn
question. If you
more,
want to know
go
more,
to
yes,
if you want to know more, go to blockchain.uark.edu. Maybe we can post it when you do this. Or
yes,
I wrote this for business folks, right? So if they want to understand blockchain foundations for the Internet of Value, and it's very accessible, and it's meant to assume you know nothing about blockchains and that you're a business person understanding what this technology enables.
excellent, very good. And to the audience, if you want to follow Mary, we will also flash her detail on the screen. Um, Mary, it was really a delight to have us with you today. Great insights, really a new perspective in the world of intelligent automation, of business efficiency. Um, uh, Wonderful insights, good view of the future of. I'm sure we'll get there soon. Um, Thank you so much, Mary.
Pascal, thank you. It was such an honor to spend time with you.
My pleasure. And to the audience, stay tuned for more fireside chats on automation and the future of business coming soon. Thank you.